If you scroll through your newsfeed right now, you will see two completely different realities. One warns of a burning Earth running out of time, while the other dismisses the entire crisis as an overblown hoax. This leaves us with a difficult question. Are climate activists accurately communicating a genuine scientific emergency, or are they relying on fear-based rhetoric that overstates the immediate threat? The physical reality is straightforward. Extensive research and global scientific consensus confirm that the planet is warming, and human activity is the primary driver. To understand our options, we have to look at the distinction between the physical risks and how those risks are packaged for public consumption. To accurately gauge the climate crisis, we have to evaluate both the physics of the planet and the tactics of the people delivering the message. The confusion starts because we often blend two groups together that have entirely different objectives. Science seeks to understand reality. Activism seeks to change human behavior. Scientists communicate carefully. They speak in confidence intervals, probabilities, and long-term models. They highlight uncertainty because that is how rigorous research works. Activists communicate urgency. They use emotionally powerful language and dramatic demonstrations to break through public apathy and demand immediate action. This gap in communication styles creates friction. Skeptics point to the loudest, most dramatic voices in a protest and use them to judge the entire body of scientific evidence. Confusing these distinct roles leads to a situation where the public debates the volume of the messenger rather than the content of the message. This comparison matrix breaks down the trade-off between precision and persuasion. It shows how data gets translated into public messaging. Look at the precision side first. When you communicate exclusively in dry probabilities and nuanced data, you struggle to capture public attention. This risks widespread complacency to a slow-moving threat. Now look at the persuasion side. Activists take those complex models and highlight the most severe possible outcomes. That urgency grabs headlines and puts pressure on politicians. But notice the warning indicator. The danger here is that the public mistakes extreme worst-case possibilities for guaranteed forecasts, leading to accusations of alarmism and an erosion of credibility. While persuasion generates the visibility necessary to start a conversation, stretching claims beyond what the evidence supports makes it harder to sustain long-term public trust. When critics accuse climate campaigns of crying wolf, it helps to look at the historical track record. Environmentalists have issued dire warnings before. Decades ago, warnings about acid rain damage faced heavy resistance from industries who claimed regulations would destroy the economy. Similarly, scientists and activists pushed heavily for global restrictions on chlorofluorocarbons, warning that everyday consumer products were rapidly depleting the atmosphere. The threat was real. We observed a massive ozone hole over Antarctica. But because nations cooperated to restrict emissions, the ozone layer began recovering. Just because an avertive crisis looks like a false alarm in hindsight, that doesn't mean the initial warnings were exaggerated. It means the policies worked.
Activism often relies on apocalyptic imagery, like burning forests and flooded cities, because fear is an incredibly powerful psychological motivator. But psychologists note a crucial tipping point. Fear only drives people to act if they believe that practical, achievable solutions actually exist. If you barrage people with terrifying scenarios but offer no clear path forward, the response flips. The audience will freeze, deny the problem entirely, or succumb to overwhelming anxiety. Media incentives complicate this further. News algorithms are designed to financially reward dramatic, fear-based headlines, meaning the most extreme scenarios will always get the most screen time. This forces activists to walk a razor-thin line. Generate too little concern, and society does nothing. Generate too much fear, and you create hopeless paralysis. A major source of skepticism towards climate activism focuses on the immediate costs of energy transitions and the stability of legacy industries. These concerns are valid. Shifting away from legacy industries causes real job displacement and economic friction, placing a particularly heavy burden on developing nations trying to grow. But we have to weigh the price of that transition against the cost of inaction. Flooded streets, ruined supply chains, and compounding infrastructure damage carry an enormous economic toll of their own.
Economic assessments from major financial institutions find that the projected damage to global food systems and coastal cities carries a much higher price tag than the transition to cleaner energy. The debate shouldn't be about whether climate action is expensive. It's about whether the return on investment for action is cheaper than the final bill for inaction. Ultimately, we have to hold two overlapping truths at the same time. The physical reality of a warming planet is undeniable, even if some activist rhetoric uses exaggerated framing. If you find protest slogans or proposed economic policies off-putting, look directly at the physical changes on the Earth. The data and the retreating ice show a clear, measurable trend. And if you feel overwhelmed by climate anxiety, remember that the worst-case scenarios pushed by awareness campaigns are mapped possibilities. They are absolutely not predetermined, unchangeable futures. Human societies are incredibly adaptable. We have the technology, the resources, and the agency to mitigate the worst outcomes and build practical solutions. Acknowledging the communicative flaws of the activist messenger does not give us permission to ignore the urgent message in the data. This quadrant chart maps out a strategy for how we should process future climate news, balancing what we know against how we react. You want to avoid the bottom corners. Being uninformed leaves you vulnerable to the absolute apathy of denial on one side and the paralyzing panic of doom scrolling on the other. The target zone is up here, high scientific literacy combined with proportional concern. You understand the severe risks, but you remain focused on actionable responses. Solving the climate challenge requires intellectual honesty. That means doing the hard work of actively separating rigorous data from emotional noise. We don't have to choose between blind acceptance and automatic skepticism. We just need to follow the evidence, wherever it leads.